Trade reports are escalating surrounding the Toronto Maple Leafs as a new report has dropped revealing the Leafs trade plans. We're going to break that down as well as discuss another report that has revealed a very interesting and new Toronto Maple Leafs target. So stay tuned for all that in this episode. But before we get into it, we are proud to announce that this video is brought to you by Rentals.ca, who are proud supporters of Team Canada. And while they've been supporting our national team defend their home court in international competition, they've also been helping thousands of Canadians find their home floor across the country. And it doesn't matter what city you are in, whether it is Toronto, Vancouver, Montreal, Calgary, Halifax, Winnipeg, Mississauga, Edmonton, Victoria, St. John's, no matter where it is, from coast to coast, Rentals.ca has a ton of options to find the perfect place and price for you.
Their website is clean and easy to use, and you can pinpoint exactly on the map where you want to move, finding all the options in your area. Find your home court with Rentals.ca.
Yeah, check out the link in the pinned comment and the description as well. And thank you to Rentals.ca once again for sponsoring this one. They've been a proud supporter of us, a proud supporter of Team Canada, and also a proud supporter of you guys for helping you find the best rentals across the country. Thank you again to Rentals.ca for sponsoring this video. But there's a lot to go over today, and there's some trade rumors escalating, and obviously the Toronto Maple Leafs are on a very big hot streak right now, but they're also in the middle of a very weird schedule. I guess not many games are going on for the Toronto Maple Leafs, but reports, trade rumors, everything is starting to escalate, and as we're inching closer and closer to this trade deadline, that's going to be a big one for the Leafs. We're going to start to hear more and more names, and Morgan Frost is a name that has been brought up, and we also have another report that is kind of diving into the full Leafs trade plans here, but the Leafs poked around on Morgan Frost last season. I wonder if they circle back. And this is coming from a report from a Flyers reporter saying that the Flyers and Morgan Frost feel as though they are headed towards a breakup. So seems like the stars are aligning. We've been discussing Morgan Frost. We used to a lot on the, in the channel last season, a bunch of different times. Even in the offseason, there were some rumors about a trade happening. Morgan Frost seems like a very interesting fit for the Toronto Maple Leafs, who are desperately looking to upgrade their third line center. And what are your thoughts on this? You can see this here. Morgan Frost could soon be on the moves. The Leafs have a need at center, and he has been one of many that the fans have clamored as a prime target. The Flyers have previously expressed interest in Nick Robertson. So there's a ton of things. The stars are aligning perfectly. The Flyers have expressed interest in Nick Robertson. Nick Alberga is coming out and saying that could the Leafs circle back? And of course, the Flyers, we know for a fact, are actively looking to trade him. This seems like a match, a perfect match, a match made in heaven for the Toronto Maple Leafs.
This could be a really good trade for the Toronto Maple Leafs, a good trade partner as well, because this is a guy who's not playing for the Philadelphia Flyers right now. Tortorella does not have him in the lineup right now. He's been a healthy scratch, even dating back to last season. And maybe he's just not a fan of this player. But if you look at what he can do on the Toronto Maple Leafs, if they've got him into, maybe a third line center role, which I think at some point this season, they're going to have to get a third line center. They're going to have to trade for somebody. And I think this is a really cost-effective option because, of course, his contract looks fantastic as well. We'll get to that. And you can definitely make that work. But it's the type of player that he is. He's great offensively, like super underrated. I think people forget about him because he plays in Philadelphia. He hasn't really gotten a fair shake in his NHL career so far, and he's getting scratched this year. So people think very, low of him, I guess. But the other interesting, tie to Toronto is his dad used to be the PA announcer, and a lot of people remember that as well. So he grew up playing hockey here. His dad was the PA announcer. So coming back to, have a little reunion with the Leafs would be cool. Now, in return for the Flyers, right? Who do they want? I think the Flyers want a NHL ready player. And I was actually texting with one of my friends who's a diehard Flyers fan. And I was like, what, if they were to trade Frost, like what do they need in return? And he didn't say any player's name specifically, but he was describing Nick Robertson to me. And I think that it could be a very good match for the Philadelphia Flyers as well. And a trade could make a lot of sense for them. I do think that they're going to want a pick in return as well as a player, because this could be a very effective player for another team. But I think it's a very interesting option for the Leafs. I think he could really help the team out.
Yeah, and again, he would factor in. You can see his time on ice is projected to be as a third line center, and that's exactly what the Leafs need. Now, obviously, we saw Pontus Holmberg have a very good game. Some other players are starting to play well, but at the end of the day, I think the Leafs have some more higher ambitions regarding the trade deadline this season. You can see this here. So his current cap hit is 2.1 million, which isn't bad at all. He's only 25 years old as well. So very similar age to Nick Robertson. You basically be just exchanging a young player who doesn't want to be with the Philadelphia Flyers, who's getting benched, for a young player who seemingly doesn't want to be in Toronto because of a variety of reasons, requested a trade in the offseason. And obviously, Morgan Frost's cap hit is almost 3 times the amount of Nick Robertson's, but he is an RFA in 2025, so after this season. So you'd have the opportunity to retain him. You'd have the opportunity to keep him going forward, which is something you don't have the luxury with Nick Robertson, who is going to be a UFA after this season. So again, it makes a ton of sense, and he's kind of just been factored out of the Flyers lineup at this point. And for a guy who throughout his career is, would fit well with the Leafs, especially, there's a lot of ties there. We know a bunch of different things, and he's a solid player still, and he's actually a very underratedly good defensive center, especially something at the Toronto Maple Leafs. And I think he would fit Craig Berube's style a little bit, and he could be a third line center for the future and really build around this core alongside, of course, Austin Matthews. Depending what they do with Mitch Marner, the situation there remains fluid. I would tend to believe that they are going to extend him at some point. But either way, going forward, this could be the guy. And there's been a lot of rumors, especially as of late, because the Flyers, it seems like a mirrored situation here, except one's a center, one's a wing, with Nick Robertson and Morgan Frost, both unhappy, both young, and both probably going to get dealt.
And both could probably use a change of scenery at this point in their career, because I think that they're both really good players, but they're not, reaching their potential right now. And I think it's a little bit weird. If you look at Tortorella and the types of players that he likes, Nick Robertson doesn't really fit the bill. But I think the Flyers, the team that they are, could use another goal scorer. They could use a guy like Nick Robertson. And I think he is pretty responsible defensively. Like, he's really cleaned up a lot of the stuff that was driving me personally when I watched games crazy last year, this year, but he's just not putting the puck in the back of the net. And then if you look at Morgan Frost, again, I was texting with one of my friends and he was saying, at times he can be a little, lazy on the defensive end at times, but he is pretty responsible when he's locked in. But the thing for me is he's playing on a team that isn't very good and doesn't seem to like him, doesn't want to play him. The coach doesn't seem to have a lot of confidence in him. So I feel like if he was to come to Toronto and, secure a role on the third line, because the Leafs need more identity throughout the lineup. A guy like Nick Robertson playing on the third line, I'm not sure the way he's playing right now, if that's going to be something that they're really enthusiastic about heading into the playoffs. So I think they need more identity throughout the lineup. This is a guy who can fill that role, play with more purpose. I think his game will change in that way. And I think he can be a very dynamic player, but he's just playing in a really bad situation right now. So I think this could be good for the Leafs. He's a natural center. They could use another guy like that. So I think, when you look at other options around the league, this is definitely a cost-effective one. Like, he's an RFA, so you retain his rights no matter what. And yes, you can kind of look at him as a rental in a way because his contract does expire this year. But again, you would retain his rights and he only makes 2.1. You can absolutely make room for that. You can't make room for a $6 million player or $7 million player at this point, but you can make room for this. And I think he can make a difference on the Leafs. So it's very interesting. We'll see if Nick Robertson could be on the way out the other way, but I think this is, could help both teams, honestly. Like, this is a decent match.
Yeah, and make a ton of sense. And we also have an update from, of course, James Myrtle here, and we'll dive into a couple of these in another video, of course. But Toronto is exploring their options at center, inside and outside the organization. And he goes on to talk about Brock Nelson and a couple of other guys, Yanni Gord. But we'll dive into that in more details in a future video. But again, another reporter coming out and saying that Toronto is exploring their options at center, inside and outside of the organization. And Morgan Frost would fall under that category as outside of the organization. And he's had some decent he's had some decent run in the NHL, and so has Nick Robertson. So I think ultimately a move could be mutually beneficial for both sides and help kind of provide some identity. Because quite frankly, obviously, if you tuned into our stream yesterday, you would have seen that, hey, the Nick Robertson hate is real right now. And again, it's not that I don't think Nick Robertson's a good player. I think that he could really benefit from a change of scenery. So any final thoughts?
Yeah, I think he could benefit from a change of scenery. I do think that Nick Robertson has a lot of use. I wouldn't get rid of him just for the sake of getting rid of him. That's the point I'm trying to get across. I think, he's a really good player still, but his value has tanked a little bit. He hasn't been scoring this year. That's what he's there to do. I think his role on the Leafs has kind of been, during the summer, if you ask me, I would say, yeah, maybe they'd give him a shot on the second line. Then they signed Pacioretty. Then they signed guys like Lorentz. The lineup starts to fill out a little bit more. Pacioretty's playing really well. Robertson's taking a backseat to that. So I think it's very interesting. I think the Leafs need another guy like Frost who can score, can defend at times. I believe in him. I think he could on a better team and if he was playing with more purpose. And I think that's a guy that you can probably win with in the playoffs if he's playing with more purpose. But Nick Robertson would probably have to go the other way just to make salary work too, maybe another piece. But I do think that the Flyers are going to want a draft pick as well with that, because I think that they know a lot of teams would be in on this player.
And he's a lot more established than Nick Robertson. Back-to-back 40-point seasons. Last season, I believe, in 71 games, and the year before in 81 games. He's had over 40 points. So something Nick Robertson hasn't done yet. So let us know down below, would you do this trade? Essentially, Nick Robertson for Morgan Frost with some draft compensation. Let us know down below. And again, thank you to Rentals.ca for sponsoring this video. We'll see you guys later.